Welcome back to TCM. I'm Dave Karger. So happy to be here all night with Jacqueline Stewart as we have a lineup of documentaries for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Hello again, Jacqueline.
Hi, Dave. Great to be here with you.
I would say we're going to end the evening on a high note, but we're going to end the evening on many high notes because our next film from 1982 is Say Amen Somebody, which really delves into the origins and pioneers and characters of gospel music. I know you like this movie a lot. What do you love so much about it?
Well, this movie is amazing to me for many reasons. First of all, because it features the inventor, the founder of gospel music, Thomas Dorsey. This is someone that I have been hearing about my whole life because he was an important figure in the Black church here in Chicago. And so having the ability to see him at such an advanced age, still remembering with great detail and with so much spirit why it is that he invented gospel music, and to see him appreciated by the gospel community. It's just an amazing documentation of him as a historical figure.
And I think a lot of people know the song, Take My Hand, Precious Lord, but they might not know the songwriter. And this is a great way to learn so much more about him. Also, of course, Mahalia Jackson is mentioned in this movie, more of a household name. But then there's people like Willie Mae Ford Smith, real characters, the Barrett sisters that we learn about in this movie, people that I certainly was not familiar with. I love particularly female gospel singers. So to learn about these women and to hear them perform throughout this movie is just such a treat.
I agree with you. The emphasis on women here, Willie Mae Ford Smith is a character that will be unforgettable to you after watching this film. She carries the film, the power of her spirit, the power of her voice, her wisdom. And then we have Sally Martin, who is a figure I had never heard of before seeing this film. And as we learn, she's the reason we know who Thomas Dorsey is. She built his business. So the fact that we get to see women performing obviously is valuable, but we also learn the backstories of these women, how brilliant they were and how resilient they were and how necessary they were for the development and the sharing of gospel music around the country and around the world.
Yeah, and even though they accomplished so much, it's fascinating to see some of the resistance that they experienced. There is one scene with Willie Mae Ford Smith, don't want to say too much, but look out for a scene where she's driving in the car with her grandson, who has some very interesting opinions to share about what women should and should not be doing in the church. And it was fascinating to me to see members of her own family maybe not being as 100% supportive as you would imagine that they would be.
And it's amazing to see how she sets him straight. The strength that she demonstrates is remarkable. And we'll see how she infused that in her music and lifted the spirits of so many people. I just can't tell you how amazing it is to watch these elders speaking. And you feel every time they're talking that you just want to pause and soak in the wisdom that they're sharing. So this is just an extraordinary resource and a gem of a film.
What is so special about Chicago when it comes to gospel music? Because a lot of this movie is set there. What should people know about the importance of this kind of music in Chicago community?
Well, I think one of the things that we learn in the film is that Chicago, but also St. Louis, these are cities where so many thousands of African Americans moved from the South as part of the Great Migration. And so we are looking at people who were born in the South, who carried their hopes and dreams and their culture to these large metropolitan areas. And from there, they were able to participate in these larger networks of religious culture and popular culture. So the ways that this film gives us a musical history, it's also giving us a much larger cultural history.
Unfortunately, it also gives you scenes of white people clapping on the wrong beat. So I apologize in advance for that, which people are about to see. But they are also going to experience some beautiful, beautiful musical moments. So stick around, Jacqueline. You'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more afterwards. But here from 1982, directed by George Nierenberg, is Say Amen Somebody. I'm back with Jacqueline Stewart. And Jacqueline, that was such a great way to end our evening. It's worth noting that in 1982, this movie was on Rolling Stone and Roger Ebert's top 10 lists of the best movies of the year. And more recently, last year, it played at the Berlin Film Festival and also at Lincoln Center. So I'm really happy that different audiences in different times really seem to appreciate this film.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see the kind of revival that this restored version of the film is receiving. And I think it's a testament to the power of the music and also the power of the figures who are narrating their lives in this film. I'm really struck by moments in the film that are looking at kind of the 1980s urban landscape. There's that amazing scene when Willie Mae Ford Smith's daughter and son are at Union Station, I think it is, in St. Louis, and remembering the fanfare when she would get off the train. But it's a ruin at that moment. So looking at the decline of these, especially African American communities, and seeing what that looked like in the 1980s, I think that that certainly resonates with audiences now as we mourn the loss of these really vibrant communities and the ongoing economic decline that has really had a decimating impact on so many people.
I do think that's a hallmark of this filmmaker, George Nierenberg. We've shown his movie No Maps on My Taps several times on TCM, which really talks about the history of tap dancing. His movies really operate on different levels and talking about the performers themselves, but also the different kind of socioeconomic shifts that may have taken place during their lifetime. So just absolutely fascinating. We should also tell people they might have heard the name Ma Rainey mentioned in this film. Ma Rainey, of course, is the subject of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the August Wilson play that is now a Netflix movie starring Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman. So people can learn more about Ma Rainey through that project, which is available now.
Yes, I really love the fact that this film explains what gospel music is, that it was sort of a fusion of religious music and the blues. So the Ma Rainey connection is so important. And Thomas Dorsey was a blues performer who then had a spiritual transformation and moved into a kind of sacred music, but he was bringing elements of the blues. So this kind of cultural divide between church people and secular people, we learn in this film that Dorsey and the people who were singing his songs, they were not always welcome in the church. They were shunned by church people. So it's a really important reminder that gospel music actually is this kind of syncretic form. And that's why it was so powerful, because it kind of bridged gaps between the church and the world, so to speak. And we can hear the influences of people like Ma Rainey in gospel music.
Another person who factors into this movie for some film nerds is Ed Lachman, who was one of the cinematographers on the movie, who would then go on years later to work very closely with Todd Haynes and be the DP on films like Far From Heaven and I'm Not There. So I was fascinated to see that he really got his start in documentary film, so different from the very atmospheric work that he would end up doing with Todd Haynes.
Yes, that's right. And what amazing camera work in this film. There are some moments when I think we're inside of Sally Martin's home, plastic covered furniture, all of these kinds of relics of her musical career. And she's sitting on her sticky sofa with Thomas Dorsey, and they're listening to his first record. And we get this shot of their feet, of their shoes, padding out the beat. So he is just really in the space. It just brought back the strongest memories of my grandparents' homes. And his attention to detail, I think, is just remarkable in this film. And it's not surprising to see the ways that he developed his eye over the course of his remarkable career.
Well, Jacqueline, it's been so fun and fascinating having you here with me all night to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So thank you so much.
Always great to be with you, Dave. Thank you.
All right, well, up next is another documentary also featuring Mahalia Jackson alongside Louis Armstrong and Thelonious Monk. It's a 1959 film with highlights from the Newport Jazz Festival.